So we brought up a song. I think I read it, like the lyrics of the song. And it was written back in 2012, 2010, something like that. It's a Cody Jinks song. I don't remember the name. California's still on fire, and there's no rain over in Texas. There's a few less ice caps way up north here. So, kind of laid it all out. Well, here we are again. We got California in the mix. I remembered, as every time I hear riot in California, I remember you having the Rodney King experience with your kids. Mm-hmm. Like, who's this Rodney King guy? And I'm like, what are we teaching these people in school? Do they not know any history whatsoever? So California is no stranger to
riots.
Riots.
Back 60s, right? The Watts stuff, yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of a hotbed for it.
It's always been. It's the university flavors, and frankly, I think that there's money behind all of these riots. I started thinking historically, Chicago was built on left ideology, democratic, loose, and where, anybody that's seen the movie Untouchables, I get it. It's a movie, but it's based on a true story of how they got Al Capone. But, the federal government had to infiltrate literally Chicago, and the feds and the cops were not copacetic at that point. And here we are again. It's like this vicious circle. I wanted to get your take on the federal government going in there and trying to keep trying to have a presence of keeping things to a dull roar. And nowadays we have what seems to be paid individuals, many of them, agitators, they call them, whatever you want to call this. How do you sign up for this job? There's Facebook ads. I didn't even know Facebook was still around. It is, live and well. There's ways in which they recruit, and the recruiting is interesting. The strongest, the most, the person that everyone wants to follow, everyone wants to be with, and when there's trouble afoot, you're the one we're looking for. So it's pretty...
just a grassroots lobbying, right?
It's
just
a
same
strange thing.
It's strange. It's weird. It's just
what dude
on the
isn't going to read that and go, that's me? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, there's a fair amount of dudes that are going a fair amount of dudes that don't fit that bill anywhere close, but think it's them. Yeah. But anyway, my point is the money's pretty good, and there's no consequences in the ad, no consequences. And for the most part,
there haven't been.
So what's your take on this? Because I don't like the downstream effect or the right now effect either, with those that have been here for a long period of time, have roots in our country. They may have come in illegally, but they're over here going, what in the Sam are you people doing?
Yeah, I think there's elements of all kinds of different things going on, right? There might be some people that are going, this isn't helping our cause. It's definitely it's almost shaping into something different than even the immigration issue. It's now almost shaping into a federal versus state type of argument, and that's what the litigation is going to be if California sues, and there's some other states that are joining on that same. Today I was watching, it's popping up all over the place. And so you're going to have this battle between federal and state government, which is something that we've been seeing more lately than we have in the past. As far as, I take a middle ground with all of this in the sense that I don't believe that fully that the reason we're putting troops and National Guard on the ground is to protect the civilians and citizens of Los Angeles. I honestly just don't believe that. Whether that's right, I don't take an opinion whether it's right to. I think that's more to protect ICE agencies and ICE agents and their ability to do their job. I think that's the main motivation, even though we're hearing rhetoric from from the federal government saying this is to protect Los Angeles, but the mayor,
it's a good talking
mayor
point.
And governor and everybody else is like, we didn't ask for your help and we're good, and it's pretty isolated to a real small area, and LAPD can handle it. And I believe both sides on that. I don't think California is burning all over the place. It's burning in the sense that that's where the hot is, right? And that's where, the flame is there, and if it spreads, then we'll know where it started. But I take a little middle ground there, as I don't believe, all of Trump's department's rhetoric on protecting the civilians. He's a power hungry guy, and he wants his stuff to, just like we've talked about a million times, he's gonna get stuff done, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we like and sometimes don't like about him, but he's going to get stuff done, and somebody was standing in his way, and he's got ability to do what he thinks.
Well, it's a sanctuary city, and I think that has something to do with this.
I think he's definitely going after those. I mean, that's why, and it's like, for him, some presidents would be like, okay, this is getting hot, let's chill it out a little bit. He's like, oh, this is getting hot, let's dig our heels in even more and let's go after it even more. And so that's just his nature of things.
I would like him to say something of this nature. This would be something I'd like. I did enjoy his troll. He's the master at that. I enjoyed his troll on Newsom.
Him and Newsom are battling for sure.
Yeah, I love.
And I'm not obviously a huge
Trump
Newsom fan for totally different reasons, but
well, he's part of one of the 6 families.
Yeah.
So I loved his troll. I like Gavin Newsom. But what happened to that choo-choo train that he's supposed to have done $100 billion ago? It hasn't even begun. Like, he just starts with, I like Gavin Newsom, disarms.
We talked yesterday,
right,
but he's an idiot.
Disarms he can't govern to save his life, but,
That was what it was. I like him. We talk all the time. He's completely incompetent, but.
Right. I do like his way, because if he were to lead with, I can't stand, nothing behind it sticks.
I guess.
But the choo-choo, and that it reminds everybody about that light rail failure that's going to follow Newsom forever, and how much fault does he have in that or not, who knows. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's so much pork when it comes to politics, and I don't know where the football got fumbled on that one, because that's the funny thing is politics is like a big old huge scrum or a dog pile, or when a football comes squeezing out and every jerseys on both sides of the team jump on it, and who knows what's going on underneath that. That's politics.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like.
But I agree with you too. There's some elements of it that I definitely don't. I mean, it's interesting to see the battle between President Trump and Newsom, and the federal and the state. I don't love, in general, just like I didn't love, during Black Lives Matter protests, or I don't understand the mentality of destroying. And it's not heavily happening on this one like it was maybe during the Floyd situation, where we're just burning buildings. I mean, we're mostly going after cop cars and federal agents, but there are even some businesses that are getting targeted for no reason. And all you got to rock through a random car that doesn't belong to anything to do with the protest. I'm not quite sure what the point of doing that. I mean, you got anarchists that are just there to cause challenges.
Right.
That doesn't help the argument. I also, and my wife brought this up, and for her, I understand, political science major, I understand a little bit of how these are organized. And like you said, even to the point where right now we're paying people to organize some of these. I understand a little bit of the strategy. However, waving Mexican flags is not my favorite strategy when you're trying to talk about the ability to stay here and live the American dream. I've always not understood that from an immigrant community that I love. That's not the time to have country pride. Like, this isn't Mexico. And so if that's what you're thinking,
they're not helping their cause.
Yeah. I don't get that.
But I think that's most of the ones that we know and we're familiar with, this culture that we are, endeared to. That's not what they're doing.
Yeah. And unfortunately what people aren't seeing is I'll kind of zoom into those. Half those people aren't even Latinos.
Right. They're
not, white guys holding Mexican flags.
They don't have the right tan.
And I don't get what's the strategy there. That's not who we're fighting. We're not fighting for the Mexican government, nor even the Mexican people. Now, they might be Mexican, but that I don't get. That's kind of we're losing the message when we do that kind of stuff. I appreciate that there's been some questions asked because of these, and maybe that's where I sit in the middle ground. I mean, Tom Homan has been asked a lot of questions about, okay, here's the numbers you're purporting. Tell us the statistics, like how many criminals are you actually picking up in these raids? Because we arrested this guy that was convicted for rape. And he's had to fully admit that, it's like 5 criminals and 150 that didn't have
Right.
anything. And that's at least needs to be talked about where the priorities are actually, it's numerical right now.
Mhm.
Trump wants as many arrests as possible, no matter what those people look like, what their ages are, what their
He wants to look like it's
tactics
succeeding.
Yeah, it's data driven
Mhm.
right now, and so it's numerically driven. It doesn't matter who's caught in that loop.
He would
So that
prefer
is something
the
to
bad guys. He
understand.
would prefer
Sure.
the sexier,
It makes
the better.
it easier. Those are the
Sure.
news stories
Yeah.
that makes it easier to
The
sell.
headlines, yeah.
But because of these situations, those numbers and data is coming out a lot more, and people are becoming aware of that. And I've heard some interesting comments from even Republican senators going, there was somebody, I can't even remember who he was, but was on there going, okay, I would love to go back to a little bit more targeting of our
Yeah.
criminals and felons. And
Well, part
whatnot.
of, and I'm
just
hearing,
to calm down the.
yeah, I'm hearing little bits and pieces of things that we've chatted about here that, that we baked up, this IIE idea, wherein, I mean, I've heard bits and pieces of that little plan that would be likely a saving grace for the situation, and allow Holman, because I like his candor. I got to be straight. I mean, the fact that he's like, well,
Yeah, he's not hiding from it.
Yeah,
I mean, he's had to
nope.
tell. Like I said, he wasn't. That's why the data's coming out, because they're flat out asking him, and he's not ignoring it. He's saying, "Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, if you're there anywhere in the vicinity,
and you don't
doesn't
have
matter,
any,
you don't have documents,
right?
we're picking you up."
We're going to pick you up.
Yeah.
And so, how often? Well, I guess this would be more my lane. The criminal aspect of things is, I mean, you probably don't have to give this advice hundreds of times a day. I would assume different advice is given in your buffet, but that means shop. Who you hang out with is everything, and we have a lot of.
I think that's part of it. Unfortunately, like, I mean, close to home. I don't know if you drove by, because our offices are right by each other. But 3 days ago, the parking lot of Ranch Market.
There was
as
some-
I,
there
and it
was-
was, they may have been targeting an individual that was shopping and maybe followed him, but they picked up. I have a client right now that was
That
just a
was
mom
picked up in
shopping. I don't even know, honestly. I don't
This
even
is
know
one
how
of
they
our vitamin.
stopped.
This is one of our vitamin shop ladies.
There's civil procedure stuff that I'm not sure exactly what right they had to stop the lady that's just running by and putting her groceries in her trunk and asking her for docs. That's when we start to get into like
Arpaio sweep.
little Nazi stuff,
Well-
or show me your papers type of thing, and that's the tough part. I have a little bit of a problem with that. So
I
yeah,
don't know.
sometimes it's where you're hanging out with, and sometimes it's
I
just
don't
crazy.
know how much of a problem I have. And the reason I don't like it, I will be straight there. Like, if my heart's going to bleed a little left of center on any topic whatsoever, it's this one. And it's like, but I have to remind myself from time to time, these people chose a long time ago that this consequence. They chose this. They knew that there was potential consequences. Living in the shadows is something they chose to do, and they sometimes forget that because they've been here for so
For a
long.
long time.
And I understand that forgetfulness. I understand, that human, sentiment that, well, I belong here. Do I think they add to us? Yeah, I do actually. I do, in large part. Do I think they take away a little bit? In small part. So I don't think that that's a good level, and I think that something needs to be done. We've talked about that, and so I'm not going there. I don't enjoy what I see. I went to law school in California. I went in San Diego. It's not quite as...
Not LA.
It's not LA. But LA wasn't San Diego when I went to law school. So, I mean, this 25, 26 years ago. LA's never been, I mean, it's got spots that are pristine here and there. But for the most part, it's kind of an S-hole. And so, I mean, when's the last time you went to a Dodgers game without packing your 45? I mean, it's pretty tough. And that's the Dodgers. I mean, it's a pretty historic franchise. And, You've got crap going on at the Staples Center a handful of years ago that was super ugly, and you've got some pretty dumb stuff that happens in California. And I think that there's a lot of universities around. There's a lot of susceptible, willing individuals to throw cinder blocks, freaking concrete. I mean, look, that's attempted murder.
You know, and
in a moving vehicle. I mean, look. You can justify that they're just isolating it to ICE agents or police officers. That aggravates the whole thing.
And there's so much different rhetoric going on. Like, yeah, absolutely not the right way to go about it. You're worsening your case. I have zero support for that. I mean, I don't mind having your voice heard.
Sure.
And if we started minding that, then we've lost sight of who we are as a country, right? The violence does us no good. It takes away from your message. It's like we talked about. A lot of times, it's not even the people that are being affected that are doing this type of thing, but it's going to be thrown on their name,
right?
And whatever else. So that's not going to help their cause.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love the kind of secret police that we got going on with ICE and how they're also performing their duties with the masks and fully loaded and the civilian vehicles and whatever else. I'm not a super big fan of that. Like, and I'm seeing that on an intimate level on like court as they're.
What would you do though, given the landscape that we're in with the phones everywhere and the pictures and the threats and the.
Yeah, but haven't we always been like, why is that body of law enforcement now feel like they need to do that apart from any other law?
Because
it's
so politically charged, and we have the social media.
What was
so
the difference between Black Lives Matter back in the day, which was also a politically charged moment? We actually went the opposite, right? We made cops identify themselves, wear their badges, say their badge number, and now we have ICE officers that won't even tell you if they're ICE officers.
Right, which does create an issue.
Right.
I agree with you there to the issue created.
It's just a fear tactic of.
I don't know. I don't know if it's necessity in our landscape or if it's fear. I don't know.
And is it fear on their end? Because the federal government's saying, well, we're doing it to protect our officers because they're potentially going to be threatened, which I
has
can
happened.
Get. But what makes that different from any other law enforcement? Because a cop's going to have that same. If a cop's arresting somebody, they're going to have that same risk.
I believe we screwed the pooch a little bit on the Kavanaugh situation, where we had somebody breaking in, something like that. What was that? Coney Barrett also experienced something like that during the confirmation hearings and all that jazz. The Kavanaugh situation got ugly as far as people. There was kind of a violent intent or act in his home. I felt like we missed the bigger pitch, not pitch, it's a terrible word to put there. I think we missed the bigger point of all of it. And that is, I mean, we needed to just literally get a firing squad out because that shouldn't be happening, period. Not here, not here. And that's somebody that's, a public servant, whether you agree with them or not, that's how our cookie crumbles here. But we didn't, and we've been pretty limp. We're doing exactly what Arpaio was begging the federal government to do back in all his years. And they're doing that now to a higher degree. I mean, Arpaio would have been like, "Come on in."
No, and I have zero, and I can't argue with the fact, and the argument is great, is the easiest argument to make when Holman's making it or whoever it is. It's like, look, and they've been doing it a lot this week because we've talked a lot of this. If you want to complain to somebody, don't complain to us. We're just enforcing the laws. It's Congress you need to complain to. If you don't like this, it's if the laws change, we won't do what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing, the execution of it is getting a little secret police for me. And I maybe I've just studied way too much World War II and stuff. And my parents went to Russia when Yeltsin was overthrowing the government and the KGB was heavy. And all of that was done under, who's your neighbor, who's spying on who. covered faces.
IIE, back to that. And I
yapping on
understand what you're
people,
trying to say.
I don't
I
love
understand
that.
what you're
I
trying
want
to say, and the
a little bit more
faceless
transparency.
and all that jazz. And I think it will cool down. I do believe that this will cool down, like we see.
I think they created it a little bit. I think they hold a little bit of responsibility for what's going on in that sense, because they preempted saying that this stuff was going to happen before it really even happened. There isn't very much data or reported stories that actual people, ICE agents, were attacked
There's
or
a couple
or
of
whatever.
them. How many does it take, though?
But that what I'm telling you is comparison to every other law enforcement agency. Why is ICE different?
Well, ICE is probably different right now because where they're going for, whom they're going for, supposedly, is the bad of the bad. That's what they really want. And so the bad of the bad have abilities to, okay, this is this guy, and he has 3 kids. They go to this school.
So I get that, but I'm driving by I'm driving on the 60 yesterday, and a landscaping truck has hit another landscaping truck. And there's like ferns and palm trees all over, or palm ferns all over the freeway.
Yeah.
So I'm watching this and the traffic's kind of stopped. And I'm watching the state troopers who are helping them pick up the stuff. And then I'm watching 3 vans pull up, and out pops all the masked guys who are now coming. No, that they're not looking. They happen to be driving by, I guarantee. And all.
You don't think they were notified?
Oh, maybe by the state troopers, but it wasn't that there was an accident. It wasn't that they were looking for the Pedro driver.
I understand what you're saying.
But here's an opportunity for a guy poor guy.
So this could be a passerby, or this could have been trooper poking a button.
But where's the need to come all?
Wherein our law enforcement still hasn't, we'll get to that in a minute. Our law enforcement,
state troopers are fine. They're out there, faces uncovered. Sure. They're just they're giving tickets to whoever needs to be ticketed.
And the landscaper's not sending, his
But then
his
you
workers.
Secret police come riding by in their vans, then all of a sudden they're fully masked, and that just creates this
It's not a good
panic and fear.
It's not a good look.
And that kind of, to me, has.
I think I would be a little bit better with it if it wasn't 2 landscapers and they were going into the.
Yeah, look, if this is like a SWAT team thing,
that type of deal,
I'm okay. Yeah. If you're raiding an apartment or a business,
that's where I'm
you're
going
really
with this,
worried.
yeah.
And there are some of those. I'm okay with that. The ones that, like I said, but I've seen too many examples where it's like all those guys were in Ranch Market. They're picking up all the people in they're again. They look like the secret police just coming in and
we got questions.
It's kind of crazy because if a masked man in tack gear and armed is coming at your door unidentified, are you going to answer with your own gun? Because I feel like I would.
That's what I'm saying, and that's
okay. So let's repeat that question because it's a very good one.
There hasn't been a lot of violent attacks against ICE officers by the people they're arresting too, which is kind of crazy. Because if Americans were, you go to an American's house, average dude has his gun, Second Amendment, whatever. The dude's probably gonna start shooting if an armed masked man who's not identified with any law enforcement organizations coming up to his door saying, trying to take him in some unidentified van. He's probably gonna shoot him.
And it feels like kidnapping sometimes. Like I'm watching these things and it's like I'm watching the lady in the Ranch Market parking lot. It's throwing him in an unmarked van with masked men. And I know that it's probably ICE and I get it, but I don't know what culture you're creating. Like the fear and that. So Caden asked the question, what's the sort of repeated to the viewers is that he's like, okay, if an unarmed, masked, unidentified 3 or 4 guys are coming up with you with guns drawn and not identifying, and are you going to defend yourself with a gun on your own property type of thing? When's that going to happen? I hope not. I hope it doesn't happen. Unfortunately, they targeted even U.S. citizens, and then what situation comes out of that? But yeah, and that's a great point. I don't, that's an extreme example, but just the thought. That's what I mean for Caden to have that thought.
Where do we go?
That's where I'm worried about it, the culture that we're creating, and I think. That's part of the LA
that's
stuff.
That's why I wanted to talk
on.
to you about this today, because I do agree with a lot of this, with the broad stroke, the too broad, and if it were more tactical and more SWAT type, that would be way more understandable.
Yeah, I mean, if you're seeing hey, this was a rapist and we all came in. Absolutely.
Right. You
like
know,
cartel
here's the
guy.
beehive of whatever, and you're swooping
Whatever.
in on that. I
just
get
the
that.
two landscaper guys that got in
Yeah.
an accident on the freeway. I don't think that you need to
Well,
come in guns a-blazing and masks.
We've bled pretty long time for those landscapers and those people here. I mean, I do the traveling gig with the consulate, and I do these seminars mainly on Sundays. And these are the type of people that you and I look at day in, day out. And, you know, my primary message is be careful who you hang out with.
Yeah.
And if you see these types of things going on, make sure that you just look, don't freak out. Just make your way around the situation.
But this is the culture I'm talking about, because now you've even got, when I talk about secret police, that's what, you know, like I said, I've studied all kinds of different history. And when you were, you know, you had these harboring houses of harboring, you know, Jews or whatever else because the Nazis and the neighbors and whatever else. And you got these underground tunnels and you got these, and that was in the rudimentary days when we didn't have social media. Right now, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You've got neighbors saying, do not go outside, or here's ice over here, and we're creating this culture of complete fear. Like people are just running away from work one day because this is out. And maybe that's what they want to create, but it is very secret police, rat on your neighbor type of culture right now that we got going on.
Well, I feel like the fundamental difference is that one is getting deported to their original country and the other was getting sent to an internment camp. So there was like actual merit to fear.
So what's the difference between CCAT and El Salvador? Which is where so I don't know if you know that. So they sent a bunch of people to El Salvador, which is one of the most notorious prisons in the entire world.
It's a pretty brutal prison.
And those people were not from El Salvador, and they were sent there without really, that was a podcast we did weeks ago about without due process, basically without proving that they were gang members or anything else. They sent about 200 or 300 individuals there. So that may be an extreme example, but things like that are happening in my opinion.
I'm talking about just like a guy who came across the border illegally like 20 years ago, gets deported back to Mexico. And that's the end of the story.
And so your question is, so that's not comparable to World War II because
World War II,
the consequences were different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to compare the Holocaust to what's going on here, so don't get my message wrong. I'm just talking about the culture of fear that was created during that time.
The general culture of fear.
The
French
communities
taught us this. It's been going on historically for a long time. We had the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, we've had all kinds of organizations, KKK, whether it be KGB, Russia. Russia wasn't interring people, but absolutely there was a secret police that were ratting on people, and if you were opposed to the government, you were, maybe you were disappeared. That type of situation is just, that's not America, in my opinion. We've been pretty transparent with things.
I would really like us to be in front of Congress very fast because Holman's open to it. Trump's open to it. Everybody's open to it, to do something about it. Congress and their 2-hour weeks is really frustrating me, but always has. Always has. We've talked about that ad nauseum. And the reality here is if you have a line, and there would be a line, yes, I trespassed, here's the penalty, here's moving forward, here's the and you question things, and this is why you're so integral in my plan. I need Jesse in said plan, because you'll bring up things like, okay, well, these are not permanent. These are, renewable type stuff, kind of a little bit like DACA in a sense, but even DACA had some end, in mind, a little bit loose on the detail there, but I don't think it's a flawed plan for sure. But this plan's not. This plan maybe can, get to. And some people will want that, and some will not want that. That said, that line. Now let's go back. Now we're back in my world again, and not necessarily yours. Although we cross streams quite a bit, Ghostbuster style. Let's say of every 1,000 people in that line, and these are people that have been here for a while, a long period of time, over 5 years. They trespass to get in here. They want to make things right. They want, they're kind of self-surrendering. No, not kind of. They are self-surrendering, and they're going to have a fine, be vetted, and then be able to achieve temporary status here. If they show employment and some roots and some, an address and things of that nature. These are all good things, In this line that would populate rapidly after a few get through it and have success with it, boom. I mean, it'll change your world completely, because now you're getting people through this line as smoothly as possible. And you're saying, okay, well, here's a pitfall here, here's a pitfall here, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, so your services would get quicker and a little bit more streamlined in this type of process, which would be wonderful. It would be fantastic. Okay. What happens in a handful of years ago? Doesn't matter. I'm going to cut through all that crap. 4 of the 1,000 people in that line know where Tren de Agua is, or MS, or this gang or that gang. There's a lot of different factions, 4 of them. And most of the time, those 4 have things that would preclude them for getting through this line. Most of the time, like 9.99999% of the time, because they have this knowledge, because they're running with the wrong crowd, but they want to be in this line. All right. So these 4, there's always been these things called CIs or informants or things of that nature. The people themselves can aid in this non-masked, non-this, non-that. Information is very, very key and very golden. And wherein some of these folks may not be able to go through this line, there might be a different line created for them for their aid to, to deporting those that are, that we don't want here. Mm-hmm. Period, end of story. We just want to root out the bad. Well, you multiply that by a lot, and that's significant. And law enforcement ICE enforcement can get a lot more narrow and a lot less shotgun and a lot more rifle, a lot less spread out and a little bit more focused in on boom, 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 boom.
And that's really the key.
Not the landscaper.
Yeah, and look, I'm not even defending the landscaper if they came over illegally. I'm a lawyer. I understand the laws. I understand. I mean, it may be sad. There's a human element to it that I want everyone to remember. But ultimately, I'm not throwing a hissy fit about it, because that's just the way it is.
It was the risk they took.
Like I said, my point was only just I don't like the
mass, the look.
It's the pendulum swing that we always talked about. Like we went far left and let everybody in, and now we're going far right to the point where even the enforcement part of it is become not just enforcement.
Would we be here if we wouldn't have gone so far left?
Yeah, I don't know, and that's the thing that I just,
because 20+ million, and that's
I always sit in the middle of just let's think before. I mean, I'm a very analytical person, and I like to think things before I react. And I do not love, and this goes for the last 20 years probably, how reactive we are as a political. Which goes one of 2 ways. Congress is completely non-reactive, so I'm not trying to say that you need to go as slow as Congress does, which is basically nothing. Literally, it's the only thing they've done on immigration, and we were having this discussion in the office. The Lake and Riley Act, I don't know if you...
which kind of...
which was a complete overreaction to something, had nothing, whatever, and that's the only thing you were able to accomplish on the immigration side. Come on, guys.
Well, it had a great buzzword to it.
Oh, yeah, jeez, man. But
and I feel terrible for what happened.
No, but it had no cause and effect to anything. That shoplifting does not make a murderer. But this pendulum swing goes so far the other direction that then we create this political climate of fear, and we create this political climate of rebellion and whatever else. And again, I don't know what that's going to cause. I don't know if it's going to cause us to have to stop doing what we're doing. I don't know if it's just going to cause more of a divide, which is what it's doing right now. We're definitely dividing, and now it's like we're even trying to get into the state-federal division type of thing on the political spectrum.
Well, the feds are going to win that suit.
Immigration's federal. I don't know if they'll win the National Guard part, but as far as immigration enforcement, the feds have got their argument, and that's an easy argument.
It's not going to be a hard one for them to make. They've won this case quite a few times.
And presidential powers are getting expanded by the day, and whether you agree with that or not, that's where
It's
where
a
we're-
not.
That's where
for
we've
me.
had.
It's a not.
I
for me.
haven't been a big fan of that, but point being, and I didn't mean to minimize Reed's comment, because I get what he's saying. It's not the same thing. It's not the same consequences, and the deportation's not necessarily the thing that bothers me. I don't like our country on fire.
Right.
I don't like creating climates where you're creating fear.
Well,
and
you
I
have to
understand that some of that's, paid fear, and there's
Yeah.
anarchists and whatever else that are.
And you
loving
have
it,
a
but-
Newsom, and you have that mayor, whatever her name is. They're bad, and they're like, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on.
Sure,
They're
it's-
joining the. Just look. Let's get a little bit more. Cross the lines a little bit here, and let's smooth this out, and let's get on the same team. Once Newsom saw that, okay, this is all right.
Well, it takes heat off of him for a bunch of other things that California
Right.
was experiencing.
Well,
and so-
unfortunately for him, the master troll brings all that crap up while being interviewed about it. He's just like,
Maybe.
I like Newsom. I think he's great, but that choo-choo train, it was like just a dagger. And it's like, you guys are run terribly over there in California. It's too bad. It's a beautiful state. It's got everything. And he's not wrong.
no,
He's not wrong. I mean, California had their chance to recall this Newsom fellow and didn't. And so,
I mean,
dadgum.
he's seeing it as a way to champion, his people and his
Yeah.
votes, and maybe it's a
Well, if-
lifeline for him. I don't
in
know.
California, if the people that voted for Trump this time, if they voted in the 2020 recall, he would have been recalled. So that's how far we've come.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a litmus test, and that's interesting how far we've come. I guess that's how far California has gotten fed up. I guess that's a better way of putting that. Going back there with my family, going back there where I went to law school, seeing all the tents, seeing all the syringes, the crap in the street, like literal crap in the street. Seeing this in San Diego was really discouraging. As like I had saw, much like we do here, a fair amount of homeless folks that you probably wouldn't see in other states because the mild climate. But it wasn't. We didn't have the Walking Dead going on, and it was crazy to see that with my own eyes. And I thought it was a little bit embellished because I had gone to Disneyland. Not very long before then, with him, and it wasn't that jacked up at all. It
San
seemed
Francisco, one of my favorite cities in the world, and then we went back 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a complete mess. And it's just a scare. I mean, in general, I'll be honest with you, it's wearing. It's a scary time. I don't know if you feel the same. Seeing military boots on the ground in a state, whether I agree or disagree, or whether you agree or disagree, or whether you feel like it's necessitated. Think about that, just the where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about division in the country. We've talked about kind of where we're at politically. That's scary.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's interesting that there's no semblance of that here, and we have about the dumbest governor we've ever had.
We'll see. I've heard some rumors that we're going to be.
I don't foresee military.
I don't think no, and I don't think I
already
foresee
get
the
ICE
type of
ugly, but
of riots that LA's just they know how to do riots. I guess if that's a
they're
compliment
real
to do.
good at that.
So if LA, we're seeing it all over. I mean, Portland and Seattle, they're kind of similar to LA.
Yeah.
They're doing some things right now. I don't see that coming out of Phoenix. We've got more of a blue collar, working class, just wants to go to work. And that's
Again,
like
the
landscaping
consulate that
guys.
I'm with, that's kind of the.
It's
they're
not-
not fighters.
It's not the
they're-
same. The Chicano, California kind
Is a
of
different
culture is a
breed.
little different
Little
than
different.
here.
Mhm.
California Latinos they identify as California Latinos.
Right.
It's a little different.
Like straight up. Even the normal ones that are not breaking the law.
So it won't happen in the same way, but and I hope not. I hope that, like I said, I hope there's some solutions that can come,
I think it's like everything else that we see, and I'll see what you think about this, and we'll wrap it up. I think that we start at 10, and Trump's always aiming for that 7, 6, 7 number. And I think right here with the California thing, it was a reason enough sufficient enough reason to get his butt in there at the 10 level, and then to creep that down to about a 7. And that would really benefit California long term, but it has bad optics right now.
And I'm okay with that thought.
But optics.
My problem is that our country, and we've watched it, and we've talked about it in the last 20 years, has seen this huge political shift. And everything that happens, while it happens maybe at a 10 level and then drops down to a 5, the next president then goes to a 12 and it drops down to a 8. I just see this pattern of you set a precedent now and put boots on the ground. And
I'll argue this a little, because
I hope that you have more
a little.
optimism for where we're going.
I don't know about if it's optimistic or not, but we had blood running through the streets in Chicago in the 1930s, and the federal involvement and masked would have been nice compared to what they were doing in that city at that time. And that city did definitely benefit from that federal presence and that involvement. And that was an ugly...
And they welcomed it at that time. There's a little bit of a difference.
A little bit of a difference. That the police was dirty as all get out, and we had some problems with that. And look, it's a good model to look at, because Chicago was actually quite successful and grew into a great city, and then just kind of repeat it now. But we forget the 30s to the 70s. Chicago 60s. So that's 30 years. I don't know. I don't like the look. I wanted to get your take on it. I think this is good food for thought for everybody out there. We need to get this uploaded and out there right after our Idaho chat and our chat last week when we were talking about all sorts of cool stuff. Okay?
Giving the thumbs up.
Yeah, he's excited.
Yeah.
Cracker Jack staff
Prayers.
over here. Yeah, we're going to need him.
All right.
Yep, California's still on fire.